I was surprised by the amount of overlap between what I'm going to be talking about and the previous presentation. Um, I'm not going to show as much of the detailed forms and things as Rico was doing. I'd like to talk more about the place and viability of developing small business applications in Plone. In this case, the project that I'll be referring to is a time tracking solution for a Dutch lawyers firm who do insolvencies, Forsman Advocaten. So what do we mean when we talk about building small business apps? I'd say that it's functionality that's tailored to the business workflows and processes of specific individual businesses. And even, I mean, businesses, things start to become generic or fixed when businesses become really huge, or when jobs are really low level. Someone came up in conversation before that, say CEOs don't stick to workflows, and parking garage attendants have very strict workflows that they have to stick to. But every business basically has its own variations and rules that makes things work for them that they feel comfortable with. So that's what I would target as a small business application. Examples are contact databases, resource booking, dashboards on leads and things in a specific context. Content automation, like for example, if we add this kind of a folder, then it needs to have a bunch of standard documents already populated in it. Registration for courses or events and things, reporting on content that's existing in your system. Ad hoc surveys, like at the university example, there's tons of surveys and so forth. Okay, and the next question is, why do you actually set out to build these things from scratch? Because something like a survey, I mean, that's super generic, isn't it? I mean, and the reason is if you can get away with a hosted thing, then go ahead and use it, fine. But actually, in the end, they're always a little bit too short or too long. You always have to make compromises. And also, while as you're building something, maybe you start out with a hosted thing, and it takes you some part of the way, and then you realize what what would actually make your life better. So it's an iterative thing. If you're building small business apps like this, you need to be able to go back and change things. It's bad if you have to try and get things right the first time. And then everything is connected. If you're using hosted generic things, then it's something off on its own, on someone else's platform. And really, always your business app has to do with the people in your organization. So you don't want to necessarily have to add them over and over to every hosted system that you're using. You might want to refer to content in your system, documents and things in your system. But I've been I realized that this is actually quite a well-established space. There's quite a lot of building of apps online going on. If you do this is just the top image result for a DuckDuckGo search on Zoho. App Zoho being a platform that allows lots of little prepackaged apps that you can connect together. If you go to the website Alternative 2, look for Alternative to Zoho, there's a long list of things that you can use to build stuff. FileMaker is one that I was using at the end of the 90s. you create forms and wire them up together and so on. And it feels very, for someone who remembers FileMaker, Plomino is really not so strange. So I don't think that it's like a really peculiar kind of a thing to want to do for a small business. Okay, now for the customer in this case, they started out using an off-the-shelf solution. I was working with one principal there, Martin de Vries. Obviously, he knows his business inside and out. And the off-the-shelf tool couldn't accommodate all the details that would really make it worthwhile for him. They were paying about 2,500 euros. The previous system was a really customizable thing, and they did get a lot of support from the guy running it, the people running it. They could add custom fields and so on and so on and so on. So I don't think. I mean, if you're going for the really big ones like Zoho, you will get much less support and customization and so on. So I think for a general purpose public kind of a service, this one was pretty good, and for that they were paying 2,500 euro more or less a year. And one other factor that made Plone attractive for them is that they're already using it. They already had a ton of documents and things in it. So okay, in 2013 they kicked off this time tracking application that they were going to use. This one was actually handed off to me by Eric from Machina Corpus. They had a detailed description of what they wanted to do. The rough goals that they hoped to reach with this was to have a time tracking system that suited them to generate a whole set of reports based on the time tracking. They had tons of clever ideas, what they nice to haves and things that they want to do in future and so on and so on. That a lot of them basically turned out they don't really need it. They get by with the initial things that we built. They also wanted to use it to gain feedback on how they work. Now the kinds of details that I was talking about and what I think makes it shows the kind how complex this kind of thing gets without having to go to the Python level and do all kinds of low-level plumbing. You can still end up with something really complex. In the case of the university, we had this. Rico was showing this massive workflow diagram. In this case, it's not so much a huge workflow diagram. It's different kinds of complex things. In this case, for example, there's some report that needs to come out within a month. Subsequently, they need reports every 3 months, but only the first 3. And then from the 4th report onwards, it's 6 monthly. They're tracking time so that they can compute what they need to build. But it's not a simple multiplication thing to get from the time to an amount. In the first place, there's a base rate. In the second place, depending on your job within the organization, you get a different multiplier. Then, depending on how long you've been working at the place, it changes. Then, depending on the size of the estate that you're handling, there's a different factor coming in. Then, for cases between, say, 2010 and 2012 or whatever, the base rate is one number, and then subsequently the next month or at some day it changes to a different number. So if you're doing a report on time logs that span these time periods, you need to switch to using the right rate for the right time logs. the case factor doesn't apply to all categories of employees. They need to calculate VAT. VAT rates change. For every time log that they capture, it's not simply, there's a bunch of fields that they need to capture. Time logs have a state. So, for example, they want to be capturing all the time that they spend, but it's not to say that the court will actually accept all the time that they've logged. So they might say that they're billing time for this kind of correspondence or whatever, and then the court disallows that. They say, no, they shouldn't have been billing for that. So then they still want to know that they logged that time, but they don't want it recorded in the reports anymore. So the time logs need to have different kinds of state. They have a system whereby they can submit advance requests. So before the final judgment in the case has been awarded, they've already spent a bunch of time, depending on the estate size, etc., etc. They can do requests based on what the turnout is likely to be. If such advance requests get awarded, then the time logs that were featured in those requests can't be billed again. They might. It's not a simple time cutoff. Say you build up to January, but subsequently some more logs from January get added, and those new January logs need to be included in the next request, but not the ones that were in the previous one up to January. It can be that logs are excluded from billing at one point and then later become eligible, so they need to be able to edit that. They need to. They want to be able to query the database of logs based on which employee and what case and so forth and so on, just for their free form for their own information. And then you need context. You're logging time against cases. It's specific employees logging time. The employees have their job titles and experience, length of experience, and so forth. You need all this config information that I mentioned, like what rates were relevant at what times, and so on. Yeah. Okay. So, how did it go? We got an export of the data logged up to that point in the online system as an Excel file. Converted that to CSV. Did a bunch of trial imports, refining that. Some of the fields in the export were we couldn't use those fields as is. For example, we got everything is basically static text as we get it, and there were inconsistencies like titles changed over time. People weren't always referred to by the same name. Cases weren't always referred to by the same name. So there was cleanup to do there. Some fields had to be consolidated into controlled vocabularies from free text. Some things need to be converted to date fields that were just string representations of dates. And that was done in a couple of weeks, just to have something. And also what we could do with Plomino is create forms that match the imported data and just import a lot of it without worrying at that point whether you're going to use all these fields as is. From that you could compute derived fields and continue with the derived fields. So we had everything in Plomino that we needed to work with quite soon. After that, started working on the time tracking, and people were starting to enter information within a month, they got to where the same level of functionality that they had with a hosted system within about 3 months for about, say, roughly $3,000, and subsequently, one of the big schemes of Martin was that he wanted to resell this. So he wanted to develop it into something that other firms in his field could use, but the Dutch legal system threw a bit of a curveball his way. They announced that they were implementing a national system to do this. So he didn't want to go ahead and develop the system if everyone was going to be told to use the national system. The national system didn't in the end, I mean, it's still not there. But he's still not confident going ahead. So that means development. Basically, we stopped at what they needed to get their job done, and that's turning out to be more or less $1,000 a year, just answering questions and making things a bit nicer, listening to their experience using it, and making small changes to make their life easier. By comparison, none of the hosted things that I showed in the slides earlier really charge less than about $10 a user per month, and that's mostly for entry level accounts, and it adds up quite quickly. So if you just take if you just assume it's $10 a user a month over a year, it's already running at a comparable rate to having a bespoke application in this case. But then, of course, you get exactly what everyone else on that platform is getting. And if you want to move off it, you better have a plan. And the people that you're using can change their plans at any time, and they can get bought over or shut down or whatever. So you're on their incredible journey. So why was Plone a nice fit for this? Their docs are already in it. Plone can accommodate this kind of thing without breaking a sweat, really. The reports that the courts want reports in specific formats. They want the layout in a certain way. They want all the fields where they want them, and so forth and so on. And with Plomino, you can write or perform. In the first place, you do it in tiny MCE as a rich text document, but then you can go in and tweak the HTML and add CSS and whatever as much as you like. We're using an add-on send as PDF to convert the Plomino generated HTML forms to PDF, you're not going to get that much control over a report with a hosted solution. The forms can easily use the same language as the users. Martin could go in and add help texts or change terms and things. And for the reasons for success, I think, in this case, because I don't think it's something that you can sort of jump on any unsuspecting business. The reasons why it worked here is they were happy to build the most important things first. They didn't demand like a massive deliverable with everything specified up front. It was important that we could evolve the data structure as we went, run a bit of a cleanup script, change our minds about how something should be represented or how documents should relate or whatever, and just go back and update the data in the live system, and it's there. We were conservative. If we're making changes, keep the old stuff around for comparison. We were never worried that we were painting ourselves into a corner, and it worked because the work done was all in implementing those fiddly business rules that I went over before. There was very little writing of widgets from scratch. I didn't have to do a lot of work to get complex ad hoc querying working, building on Plomino views that was really super comfortable, super easy to do. Access of employees to the system is built on Plone roles and groups combined with Plomino roles. So the way it would work is there's a form to add an employee. When you submit that form, Plomino checks, do we have an active users group in Plone yet? And if it doesn't, it adds that user to the group. And subsequently, when if there is not a Plone member existing yet, it will create the Plone member. If there is an existing Plone member, you can just associate the employee record in the app with a Plone member, and then it controls whether they have access to the application. Then since 2013, when we were hosting it, the amount of time spent on nursing Plone along was absolutely negligible, really. But I have to say that Zest helped a lot with that, to make it painless. What about the hosting? How demanding was the hosting? According to Zest, it's normal for a small to medium Plone site. It runs at about 500 to 600 meg in memory. The database has grown over the last few years to more than 30,000 documents, but it's less than 200 meg in the database. It's a normal shared account, a normal account on a shared server at Zest. For that kind of RAM usage, it fits in the Heroku free tier, so and you really can't call it heavy or overkill for an app, I think. The Forsman example that I've been talking about is very individual, site-specific and small, but I've been comparing it to these hosted things that serve tens of thousands of customers. And I think that this way of building applications makes it possible to scale up. You can host a ton of these applications. I can only refer to a presentation that Dylan did before. They use Plomino heavily also for government applications, and he's analyzed and gone to look at how does resource use compare for Plomino apps with file system type apps. In the case of Plomino, the whole application is database objects that get loaded into memory that can get swapped to virtual memory and so on. That can get flushed from the ZODB cache. While with file system code, when your system starts up and reads all the class definitions and everything, it's always everything is going to take up resources. As you're changing things in a Plomino application, it's live immediately. You don't have downtime. Also, if you're writing file system code, you can break things in that code. While if you're writing a Plomino formula and you try to change things that you shouldn't, and you don't have permissions to, then Plone just won't let you. Just a quick look at the implementation. This whole thing is 8 Plomino forms. Create, update, delete, etc. for employees, for time log instances, for the reports, to capture the parameters like the rates over time and so forth. Then there's 9 Plomino pages. The distinction between a Plomino form and a Plomino page is basically that a form is something that presents you with fields to fill in and has actions like submit buttons and so on, and performs validation when you submit the form and so on. while pages are more for ad hoc representation, so it's ideal for reports, dashboards and things. You can put a page in a portlet, so we've got a page that's just basically static text linking to forms, and that's the main menu, and put that in a portlet and you've got your menu. Plomino has the concept of agents, which is basically a little packaged bit of Python script that you can call from your forms and pages, and these you hit them to get the reports either as Excel to mess with them or as PDFs to send out. Then Plomino has the concept of views, whereas forms and pages may mostly focus on single documents or maybe pulling in some info from different documents. Fields are used to get an overview, to aggregate, list large sets of documents in your application. So they're used for listings and for building queries on top of it. And then Plomino has what you call script libraries. So in a Plomino application, you create a form, then you add a bunch of fields to the form, and you add Python code to do validation and stuff on fields, or to compute field values and so on. So that code is tied to that form and that field or that event on the field and so on. But a lot of things, you don't want to repeat stuff. So as soon as you see that different fields need to do the same thing to represent something or whatever, you factor it out into a script library. So that's basically how Plomino handles common code across the application. It's, I also find I use it a lot for code and conventions that I use across applications. The entire in the case of Plomino, mostly the development happens through the web in the browser. I use some browser plugins so that I edit my Python code in Vim. I don't have to fiddle with nasty, rich browser-based editors. I don't know why people are so excited about them. But it would be even better, like the rapido way of editing the code in the theme. That would be much nicer. But anyway, so the entire application gets exported to XML, and that gets checked into version control. That's about 800K uncompressed, and Java XML is verbose, so it's not that huge. About 2,000 commits over the 3-year period. And oh wait, okay, that's the end of the show. But let's do some poking about in the application. Sorry, let me just try and get this thing on screen first. There we go. Okay. One very striking characteristic of this application is it's super ugly. it's I'm afraid Plone does not show itself to its best advantage in this totally unskinned default kind of view. Anyway, this is the landing page. Basically, if someone rocks up to this application logged in as an employee, they just need to start adding time. Right now, it's me who's logged in, and I'm not an employee. So if I were an employee, then I would be pre-selected as a user. I need to. They don't care at what hour of the day work is being done. They just care about how much time is being logged. So you need to select a date. This is sticky. So once I start to add time logs, then subsequent logs will be logged on the same date until I change it. I select a case, again switch to log time. They log time in different phases of a case. So it starts out, so if we move to the second case, there's a secondary step. So each one of the phases have a whole lot of secondary steps. This is also sticky. They've got different categories of times that they log. There's a free text field to say that what they were doing, and then they log time in 6 minutes increments. So 1,2 means 1 6-minute unit, and no, it means I can't even remember that offhand now. But yeah, it's funny. I had to hack the number field to accommodate commas. Here's our view of cases. There's 111 of them under being looked at now. You can filter that. It filters across the entire set. Here's our list of logged times. And there's 27,000 ones of them there now. They also filter nice and quickly. From here you can visit the individual logs and edit them and so on. Here you generate here's the view listing reports generated over a certain kind of reports generated over a period of time. Here's one of the reports. So it's a pretty compact report. This one has, how many rows is that? 200 rows or something. We're not showing all of them. But the meat of the report is really just this one line. In this case, we're looking at one case, so we only have one line. It shows the time for each person who worked on it. And these little numbers take into account all those fiddly rules, how to come up with the final amount here. This is the configuration document. So those phases in the cases and all the sub things in the case, that they're all entered on a form in Plomino. So it can be changed. Of course, if you went and edited stuff, then you'd have to go and run a script to tidy up past things. But it's included in the export as a document. You build up the whole thing here. The same goes for the work types. Here's the base rates. We had a quick look at the behind the scenes editing things of Plomino in the previous presentation, so I won't spend much time on that. But basically, there's what you see is what you get. Layout of a form. The blue bits are the fields. The form is a container object that contains the fields. So things like the text here is editable or suggestible by the client, but then it becomes a bit more for things that become a bit more complicated. I use things like, for example, a subform. Here I'm calling the subform subcommon. You can use it to include other forms. Here I'm including another form because I want a bunch of plumbing hidden fields and events and things that help me build up my application. So it's like adding a behavior to a dexterity type, maybe roughly. It's adding some for example, in this application, time logs have a parent reference to their case. So those little, or while you're entering time logs, I mentioned some fields are sticky. They can be sticky because I've got a little subform that just refers back to the last entered document. So we can look up what we entered in the previous document. That's not something that the end user is supposed to do, but it's how I structure things in Plomino sometimes. Here's a view. The view basically has a little Python snippet to say what documents go in the view. And then, no, not that one, this one. The meat of the view are the columns that you add to it. So in the listing, these are the columns. The columns can simply refer to fields on the documents that you look up, but they can also be completely computed. So not something that's stored on the document, it's something you synthesize. These views correspond to indexes in Plomino, in Plone catalogs. So if you're computing, synthesizing new fields in views, you can actually use that in your formulas. Look up the catalog brain and use the stored values from there. What was this one? I think, yeah, we're done. Yeah. That's basically my show and tell. Oh, let's switch back to the thank you. There we go. Okay. Any questions? Please go ahead.
This is a 6.6. Oh, it's got me. Everything that you've done with Plomino here, you've done through the web. You export to an XML doc to back it up, but you don't have any part of the application sort of developed on the file system or stored on the file system or living on the file system. You've created it in the ZODB, yes?
Yeah.
So how would you how would you have a translation files for different languages for what you've done there for your fields and whatnot?
You mean like if you have a multilingual application?
Yeah, like the locales folder. How would you hook that in?
You see those little double underscores next to the field names there?
Sure.
That Plomino can turn that into a catalog. So you can basically the bit between the underscores becomes the key, and you can fill in your translations.
It's okay. So that's really nifty. The other question that I had was for reporting and things like that. A lot of the reports that you're doing there seem, lots of columnar data, sums, maybe averages, or other things like that. Is it also possible to do charting? Are there facilities within Plomino for doing like graphs of things?
Absolutely. If you look at any Plomino thing that Eric does, it's also always very beautiful with lots of graphs and maps and beautiful things. And mine are always very ugly with lots of lists of numbers.
Study all of his stuff then.
It's still somewhat restricted in that it's still using the catalog and stuff. So
yeah.
I mean, the one thing that you really don't get is what you get with SQL and joins and stuff like that. So with all Plone apps and Zope apps, you face that problem that you have to go and think about what possible reports are so that you can build the indexes and so on and so on.
But if you understand ahead of time what reports you're going for,
absolutely,
it's entirely possible to
yep.
generate catalogs.
Yep, and it's quite nice. Like you can do things like create basically a computed field, which then gets indexed, and that we've done things like created sort of grouping fields that just give summary data, and then we can just run through the catalog and just build up a really quick map of how many of all the different types are and stuff like that. It's just re-indexing's a bitch when you got a million documents like we do.
Yeah. I'd just like to emphasize again that one of the things that I wanted to convey with this presentation is that this one is hosted on a shared account at Zest, right? That's great, but what would be really awesome is if it wasn't an individual account at Zest, if it was just like a cloud for Plomino apps, where the hosting company is running clusters and things that host these apps, and people can just pile on, get an account for a Plomino app, and start building it there.
One other question. Judging by the super lekker view that you had there, this is Plone 4, and I know Plomino is Plone 4. Is there a roadmap for Plomino within Plone 5, and what is the expectation on like the timeline for that?
So yes, Plomino has been migrated to Plone 5. It's still on alpha for now, and the major changes are that we migrate to dexterity. Yeah. It used to be archetypes, so we drop it, and now it's dexterity. And I've also refactored all the GS involved, as it's now using mockup. It's mockup patterns. Yeah. So that's some changes. It does have some impacts, but the idea is to be compliant and to be able to export your old Plomino 4. Plone 4 Plomino database to a format that could be imported into the new dexterity thing. So that's still to be done, but it's planned. Close to usable at this point? Yeah, I'd already use it on production on Plone 5. Yeah, it does work.
Thank you. Is there a long-term vision after that of how you'd combine it with Rapido?
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly how we're going to be interacting between the two of them, but my idea of Plomino is that it should become more and more something really easy to use for someone who is not a developer, so probably using the same approach as platform Jordaan. That means you don't have to write Python everywhere, you just select choices, select behaviors, those kind of stuff, and it just works the way you expect. And maybe have a way to enable an advanced mode where you can go back to the formula and change stuff. So the formula would have been generated automatically, and then you can change it if you're kind of expert or able to write Python. And Rapido, at the contrary, is really a tool that is dedicated to people who know how to develop, but there are no Plone developer. So they know about Python. They can develop in Python, jQuery, JavaScript, HTML. And so at some point, maybe Rapido will be the way to handle all the computation for Plomino. So Plomino will be a kind of UI where you can configure whatever you want, and all the stuff, all the formula would be managed by Rapido. It could be a way to interact. I don't know if we're going to do that soon. I mean, soon certainly not, but that might be the end of yeah.
Any more questions? The next talk is coming up in 5 minutes, so maybe we can do one more question.
So do you think, would you estimate that if you had done this using sort of straight packages, maybe reusing dexterity, so the more classic way of doing Plone, do you think it would have been faster to do? Do you think it would have been...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what would you think? Yeah, would be the major differences? I mean, you already covered that a little bit, but
it's a bit hard to say because I would have to go back and go through that experience. But I think the kind of things that would have been harder without Plomino is to keep it sort of as freeform as we did. Keep with dexterity. If you change schemas and things that it's more messy to keep old stuff around. It's not that easy to sort of change the shape of the application, change your mind about the application halfway through. And with Plomino, it's like the documents are there; they're just like little bags with items on them. If you start writing new items to the documents, there's no complaints.
One more question. So, for either of you, do you think Plomino has the possibility to become the next Plone Form Gen? I think people are revisiting Plone Form Gen right now. And personally, I find Plomino way more powerful, but it's also a bit rougher. But with a bit of smoothing, I think it is a better solution in general.
I don't think there's anything. In principle, it would be awesome if you could add a sort of a Plone form gen style form within a Plomino application. Why do you? You can fall back to Plomino's. What you see is what you get: free form form generation if you need to, and if you don't need that, then use the Plone form gen style and just let they do the layout and drop in fields. I think they would play very nicely together. Thank you.